Hello everyone and welcome to the Alice Mackay room at the Vancouver Public Library. My name is Jorge Amigo and I'm the head of cultural programming here. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are hosting this event from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And I want to share that I'm an immigrant from Mexico and therefore a settler in these lands. So it means that I have a responsibility to continually learn about the ongoing effects of colonialism in this part of the world, and to take sincere actions towards decolonization, both in my personal life, but also in my professional life here with you as a public servant. Now, it's already February, and so it's great to welcome you back for the second Incite of this year's Incite series. We're very grateful for the Vancouver Writers Festival for this partnership, which brings the most exciting writers to this space in the library. So, on that note, a quick show of hands. Who has been in this room before? All of you. Amazing. Who has been here for an Incite event here before? Okay, most of you. And who's been here for like a VPL event that's not related to this? Okay, we need to do better marketing at the library. Before I pass it on to Leslie, I have a couple of housekeeping notes. So the first one is if you need to exit the room at any point, there's 2 exits over there. If you need to go to the bathrooms are to the right, back there. The second really important housekeeping note is please make sure your phones are not a symphony of rings and dings the whole time. So you can keep your phones on and take pictures and videos and post on social media, that's totally fine, but make sure they're not very noisy. And now, it's my pleasure to pass the torch on to Leslie Hurtig, who's the Artistic Director of the Vancouver Writers Festival.
Thank you, Jorge, and good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you all and wonderful to have you joining us from home, those of you who have joined our live stream tonight. Welcome indeed to the second Incite of our 2023 season. Tonight we are thrilled to be able to host Jen Sookfong Lee with her beautifully resonating memoir debut memoir, Superfan, How Pop Culture Broke My Heart. I'd like to echo Jorge in acknowledging that the Vancouver Writers Fest carries out its work on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We continue to learn about the history of these lands and the very necessary and urgent work that is ongoing and that still needs to take place here on these lands as we move toward reconciliation and Indigenous sovereignty. Before we begin, we'd like to thank our Incite partners, the Vancouver Public Library, for their collaboration and their support, as well as our bookseller this evening, Black Bond Book Warehouse. Books are for sale from both Marsha and Jen, and they'll be signing after this event, so please go and grab a few of those. We would also like to thank our government supporters, and they include the Government of Canada, the Government of BC, the BC Arts Council, the City of Vancouver, and CMHC Granville Island. The Vancouver Writers Fest programs year-round events, including this Incite series, which is happening every other Wednesday until early June. And on the 22nd of this month, you can join Cherie Dimeline in conversation with Billy Ray Belcourt. She'll be talking about her wicked new book, Venco, which is just hitting bookstores now, and that'll be right here in the Alice Mackay room. And then coming up on March the 11th is a special event with Booker Prize winner Eleanor Catton, who has a brand new thriller coming out. That book is Burnham Wood. I don't think it's hit the shelves just yet, but the early buzz on this one from everywhere from the Globe and Mail to Times Best Books of 2023 suggests that this is going to be a really great book. So join us for that. Our tickets are on sale if you just visit our website. You will find a link to purchase those. Soon I'm going to turn things over to our excellent host this evening, Marsha Lederman. Jen and Marsha will chat for about an hour before turning things over to you here in the library for questions, but also folks who are watching on the live stream can also submit questions, and we'll be making sure that Marsha gets those. And then, like I said before, there'll be a signing just over here after the event. And now to introduce our moderator for this evening. Marsha Lederman is the best-selling author of the recently published and widely praised Kiss the Red Stairs, The Holocaust Once Removed. She is a columnist with the Globe and Mail and was previously the Globe's Western Arts correspondent. And from this, as well as a life well spent considering pop culture, family, and female rage, I think she's the perfect person to interview our special guest tonight. Please welcome Marsha Lederman.
That was very, very dainty of me. Is this working? Yep, okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for that lovely introduction. If you're here this evening, you might know a few things about Jen Sookfong Lee. Jen was born and raised in East Vancouver. She's the author of 3 novels, The End of East, The Better Mother, which was a finalist for the City of Vancouver Book Award, and The Conjoined, which was longlisted for the International Dublin Literary Award and was a finalist for the Ethel Wilson Fiction Prize. She's the author of a previous work of nonfiction, Gentlemen of the Shade, My Own Private Idaho, and in 2021 she published her first poetry collection, The Shadow List. She has also co-edited 2 anthologies, Whatever Gets You Through, 12 Survivors on Life After Sexual Assault, and Good Mom on Paper, Writers on Creativity and Motherhood. And she has published several books for young readers. She's the co-host of the podcast Can't Lit and is also an acquiring editor for ECW Press. She's a mom of a wonderful son. They have a rescue dog and they live in Burnaby. But here's what you might not know, or at least you might not know until you read this amazing book. That Jen, or Jenny, as she was called when she was young, is the 5th of 5 sisters who were 7 to 17 years older than her, that she was an all-in student and very chatty at school, maybe not a surprise for anyone who knows her, that Bob Ross was a very important figure in her childhood. And this is how she begins her book. She was born in 1976 into a noisy house in East Vancouver where there were never enough bathrooms, privacy, or salt and vinegar chips to go around. This week on the Today Show on NBC, author Daniel Prescott recommended Superfan as one of 5 books to curl up with this winter. I can say hard agree, hashtag hard agree. Please welcome Jen Sookfong Lee. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Marsha. That was lovely.
Wasn't that
Now
good?
everyone knows how old I am.
I know. Okay. So, okay, Jen,
Yeah.
I want to start by having you open a little gift. That green bag.
What is it?
Well,
Is something going to jump out at me?
no.
Okay.
One of those items might be pre-loved.
Salt and vinegar chips!
That is not
Is
the
this
pre-loved
pre-loved?
item.
Did you eat some?
That is not pre-loved, no.
Oh my gosh. Is there another thing in here?
Yeah, there's one other thing.
Oh my gosh. It's this thing.
You might recognize it from my
Is
house.
this good for the mic, all this tissue paper opening? Oh, it's Bob Ross finger puppet! Oh my gosh!
No, it's a fridge magnet.
Oh my! Oh my god!
And a
But-
finger
and
puppet.
a finger
Oh my
puppet.
gosh,
You
it's-
can put your finger in Bob Ross. Sorry, if you've read my book, you know those kinds of jokes are quite common for me. Oh my god, look at his hair! What a guy! What a guy! Oh my god!
The
thank
tone
you.
has been set. You can open the chips if you like, but
No, they'll
maybe
make too
later.
much noise.
They
Sorry
will
for
be
the live
loud.
stream. Holy moly!
Congratulations on the book. I loved it so much, so much.
Thank you.
The idea of examining your life through popular culture it feels like such a natural, as, you know, having read it. But when did you get to that idea? How did you come up with this idea to braid the two things, your life and the popular culture you consume.
Yeah, you know, like when you go to a party, right? And you're just making small talk with people, and you'll say something like, "Did you watch the last season of The Bachelor?" And there's always one odious person who's like, "I never watch reality television. I only go to art galleries and I don't know, read the New Yorker or whatever it is they do." And I not that those things are bad, but I like those things too. But the thing is that I would find myself defending whatever it is that I wanted to talk about. And sort of the easiest way to tell people why something is important is often to tell them a story about yourself, like an anecdote, to help them sort of understand, because it gets people emotionally engaged. So I would do this. I've been doing that my whole life, and because I like things that are really kitschy, like Bob Ross, or I like things that are silly, or I like things that are often, you know, super problematic, and it's really interesting to tease out why it's problematic. And I thought, well, maybe I should just write a book about it. And then the book became more about me and less, a little bit less about the pop culture, which was not necessarily intentional, but that's the way it started.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting. Your reliance on pop culture as a young person was essential in finding your vocation. As you write in the book, that is how I became a writer. You write. She doesn't use the word write several times in one sentence like I just did. But can you explain that? Can you explain how these stories in your head turned you into a writer?
Yeah, you know, like when whoever it is that you love, that you're a fan of, and I know for Marsha that's Bono. If you know Marsha, it's always Bono. You create a kind of like relationship with them in your head. So, you know, when I was younger,
It's not just in my head.
I'm sorry. In fairness, you do have a picture of you with him in your house, framed, but that's like, you know, I'm spilling secrets. So for me, like for Bob Ross, right? Like he became a really important person in my life after my father had died, because I found him really nurturing and all of that. And it created this kind of like Saturday afternoon ritual watching him, and it became an almost sort of fatherly figure to sort of fill that hole that the grief had, you know, created inside of me. And it's the same for those, you know, like for me now, it's mostly Keanu Reeves, which is fine. He's been my problem since 1991. It's a very long relationship, and like he never calls me back. But you create these kind of like relationships, and those become stories. And these are the things, you know, young people. I sound so old. Young people today, they're often writing, you know, fan fiction, right? They're writing fiction based on, you know, these imaginary things that they make up with the people or celebrities or characters that they love. And I think that is such a flashpoint for a lot of, you know, emerging writers out there, kids and teens and, you know, younger people. So same for me.
You mentioned your dad. You were only 8 when he got sick and only 12 when he died. Anne of Green Gables came to your rescue in a way. Can you talk about that?
So Anne of Green Gables, only the most Canadian of books and things in general. I started reading Anne of Green Gables when I was 8, around the same time that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And she is, of course, an orphan, and she is constantly having to prove her worthiness in a life that would devalue her, because she's an orphan, she's a girl, she's on the verge of puberty. There's lots of things that are undesirable about her, including her red hair. And I read that book at a time when I was facing down the specter of my father's death, when I knew that being an orphan wasn't something actually that foreign. It was actually something that was quite a possibility for me. In the end of Anne of Green Gables, if you haven't read it, I'm sorry to spoil it for you, but when Matthew, her adoptive father, dies, as he's dying, he says to her, "I wouldn't have traded you for a dozen boys." And like, I grew up in a family of 5 girls, right? And when my father, one of the last things he said to me was, I had told him I was going to go to law school, which is the lie most writers tell their parents, but before he died, one of the last things he said was, "You'll make a good lawyer because you like to talk back." And I thought, they're not exactly parallel, and yet those two moments felt really twinned for me. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Another thing pop culture did for you it kept you company, but it helped you. It helped you navigate a world that was very white, and you were not white. Can you talk about how you got help from pop culture in, you know?
Yeah, the thing about like pop culture, especially when I was growing up, is that Asian women were all but invisible, almost totally invisible. And then when they did appear, they were usually quite demure, submissive, you know, had chopsticks in their hair, because that's what we do, like, you know. And those girls, I rarely saw them, and even if we did see them, they were nothing like me. I'm mouthy, snarky, you know, all of these things. I like to read, I had braces, none of those things. So when I looked at pop culture, I would try to find points of connection with things that, even though they didn't represent me totally, I could take bits and pieces and sort of put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. So even if I wasn't exactly like, say, Ione Skye and Say Anything, or even if I wasn't exactly like the girls that the boys loved in Dead Poets Society, I could take bits and pieces of everything that I saw and cobble together a sort of identity that would feel at least somewhat fitting, even though it was like just a messy ball of stuff that I jammed together. But yeah, that's, I think, for people who are racialized in Western culture in general when we were growing up, that is what we are forced to do. So we do see ourselves in all sorts of people who don't look like us, but it's a really kind of messy identity and really kind of cobbled together, really.
Did you find that it could be a point of connection with people who you went to school with who were not Chinese?
Yeah, of course. And it was the same for my entire family. Like, I think my dad really loved Hollywood musicals, like Singing in the Rain and like Gigi and An American in Paris, Gene Kelly being, I could have written a chapter about Gene Kelly, did not. And my mom really loved Doris Day and like those sort of torch singers of that era. And they used these things walking through life, right? When my dad had to go to the office, like, what do you guys talk about? You talk about what happened on Hockey Night in Canada. You talk about the last BC Lions football game, even if, and he loved those things, but they also served like a useful purpose for him. And it was the same for me. Like I could go through the 1980s talking about Dynasty and Knots Landing. Like, who shot JR? I don't know. Was it all a dream? I think it was, wasn't it? I was like 8 years old. It's a little fuzzy for me, but yeah.
Yes, Bobby was in the shower.
Oh yeah! Okay.
Played by Patrick Ewing.
I love Patrick Ewing.
He was cute.
So handsome.
How do we remember this stuff?
I don't know. I actually said Victoria Principal the other day, and I'm like, that is really pulling it out of the vault. It's a good swear. Victoria Principal!
That would be. It's a good double on, like, how could you use that? Like, yeah, it's the Victoria Principal.
It's kind of like the Doppler effect, but it's Victoria Principal.
Did you miss the ferry? Yeah, Victoria Principal. Sorry. What do you think it would have been like for a kid like you know, for your son, for instance, to grow up and be able to see a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I can't even imagine what that's like. That's what's so delightful for me, to see a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a movie that, like, I think for a lot of people it's like confusing because it's chaos and it's wild, but then isn't that amazing that these filmmakers get to tell a story that's chaotic and wild and get to do something that is just wildly creative, and instead of just doing a sad intergenerational trauma story about Chinese ladies eating dumplings, like, it's like so it's so delightful, honestly. And like when we watched Turning Red, it was another thing that was so delightful for me, for my son to watch. I mean, there was a lot of like period talk, which he did not enjoy, but the rest of it. So there's a scene in Turning Red, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, where the aunties come to save, and he's like, oh, my aunties would totally do that. And I'm like, yeah, they would. Yeah, they would.
Speaking of intergenerational stories with older Asian ladies, can we talk about the Joy Luck Club? Because that has been you've had a really interesting relationship with that. Can you talk about the trajectory that?
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster, my relationship with that book and then the movie. So I first read the book at about 14 or 15, around the time it came out. My sisters and I shared a copy, and I loved it, really. And you know, The Joy Luck Club as a novel is, if you read it to this day, is beautifully written, and it's quite a testament to Amy Tan's like skill and talent and all of that. A few years later, the movie came out. I must have been around 18 or 19, and I went with my girlfriends, who are all also Chinese Canadian, and we were really excited to see it. And I turned around, and all my girlfriends are crying. Like, they're crying and crying. And I'm like, this movie sucks. Why are you guys crying? And the reason I thought that is because I was at an age where I was like piercing parts of my body. My hair was like in pink spikes, and I smelled like a thrift store, right? Like this was the vibe I was going for at that time. And I was angry. And I was angry because I'm like, these girls in this movie are nothing like me. Like they're sad, they have good jobs, they wear turtlenecks. Like it was all this, like, it made me so mad. And then so I started to hate the Joy Luck Club, and by extension, the idea of Amy Tan. And then when I started writing this book, actually, I still didn't really love it. And then I'm writing this chapter about the Joy Luck Club, I thought, okay, I'm gonna watch the movie one more time. And then I started crying like a baby, and I'm like, I love this movie. Why did I hate it so much? And then what I realized was what I didn't like about the Joy Luck Club was not what Amy Tan had created. It was what the world had put on that book. So she had no control over how that book was going to be disseminated in the world. And by that I mean, the Joy Luck Club became the template by which all Asian writers writing in English had to measure up to. We were all expected to write this intergenerational trauma immigrant story where parents don't understand their children and children hate their parents. And I got so sick of that. Like, I was sick of it. That was not the template I wanted to write. And so when, you know, The End of East came out, and I got to launch it in New York, which was a great privilege. And I'm at this like festival, and my editor's walking around, and she says, this is Jen Sookfong Lee. She wrote The End of East. It's the Joy Luck Club, but Canadian. And I was like, no, it's not. But then I thought, is it? And I thought, well, what am I going to say about it? I'm not going to not sell the book, right? And then everyone said the same, no, I love the Joy Luck Club, because everyone does. And then, you know, a real turning point for me was understanding, too, that Amy Tan actually sings in a rock band with Stephen King, by the way, and I know, and like Matt Groening from Who Made the Simpsons, and she's the lead singer, and she wears like leather head to toe, and she yells things at the audience like, "You've heard of 50 Shades of Grey? Get ready for 100 Shades of Tan," and then she starts singing anyway. And then when I saw that, I was like, she's obviously much better than I thought.
After that very uncomfortable launch introduction, do you still find yourself, even now, compared to Amy Tan?
Oh, yeah, or anyone who's Asian, like an Asian woman. Like, I swear to God, like, people, the number of people who tell me I'm just like Ali Wong, and I'm like, no, I'm not. Or like that one time I talked to a rather famous person, and then I realized 20 minutes into the conversation, he totally thought I was Madeline Tien. And he said, and then at the end, he said, how's Rawi, like her husband? I said, I haven't seen him in 3 years. I think he's great. And then I'm like, he totally walked away thinking they were no longer married. I did that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Your father's death obviously had a huge impact on the family. You were the youngest, left alone in many ways with your mom, and your sisters were there too, mm-hmm. But they had their own lives. Your mother was very deeply affected by this, obviously, and you write about this in the book, and I'd like to ask you how you navigated writing this deeply personal, difficult history about people who are, you know, still in your life.
Yeah, my mom was just at my book launch. I will say that therapy helps a lot. Like, I've been in counseling since I was more or less 8 years old, which has been fantastic. Highly recommend if that's something that's available to you. Writing about my childhood is not so hard because there's a lot of distance there, and sort of my issues with my mother have been processed like 5,000 times, and so it wasn't really difficult for me to write that. I think that what also helps is my mother doesn't read English, which is a very useful thing for me. It's true. I had one book translated into Chinese, and I managed to keep it away from her, which was a feat. But I think that I tried to extend my mom in the book a lot of empathy. I try to really understand what makes her who she is, and what, especially at a really difficult time in our lives, why she was, alternately, mean or distant or any of those things. I will say that my mom's now in her 80s and is much nicer. So, I haven't had like a really, she hasn't had a really big rage or depressive episode in a really long time, and her edges have softened quite a bit. She's a really great grandma, which is really nice to see. Yeah, she just passes out $50 bills. She's not rich, but she just passes out $50 bills to all her grandkids. And
Wow.
Gets discount candy and gives it to them.
Oh,
So, yeah.
that's lovely.
Yeah.
What does she think of you and your career?
I don't know. She doesn't really say. She says things like, she'll say things like, so I have a group of girlfriends that I grew up with, and she knows them all, and she's like, well, how much does the doctor make? And I'll be like, well, I think it's like $300,000 a year. She'll be like, oh, well, you don't make that, but you're smarter. And I'm like, no, I'm not. She saves lives. That is not true. And yeah, she'll say things like that. And she actually, I went over recently, and she said, oh, I have these things to give you. And it was all of my newspaper clippings from my whole entire career that she'd kept. And she said, I don't think I need to keep them, but do you have copies of these? And I said, I'm sure I don't. And she said, well, take them. And so I took them. She'd kept them for like 15 years, and she kept adding to it as stuff went on. And they were so neatly folded, and like, what were they in? They were like, nothing had faded. I'm like, Mom, you should be an archivist. Like, yeah, so I think she likes it.
That's lovely. You mentioned Say Anything. And I want to talk to you about the iconic scene in Say Anything.
This one.
Because there's a story. I mean, another difficult thing that you write about is your divorce and dating after divorce. And that scene, that song worms its way into your life. And we can talk about that, but I really want to talk to you about that scene, because even I looked it up this morning, and it's like the boombox serenade, and John Cusack is the best, and Lloyd was the character name.
Lloyd Dobler.
Oh,
Yeah.
Very good. Of course, you would know that, but it's so creepy what he did.
Yeah, he's a
standing.
stalker.
It's stalking. He's
Yeah.
standing outside his crushes or ex-girlfriend. I can't remember what their
She
status
was his
at that point.
ex-girlfriend at that
Right.
point. She broke up with him and then gave him a pen to break up with him as a gift. And then he cried to his friends, she broke up with me and she gave me a pen. It's the best line of the movie. Anyway, sorry.
And then, no, it's good. I need these details. And then he goes and, in the famous scene, stands outside her window holding the boombox playing In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
So awful. Can you talk about how that scene was received? How did you see it when the movie came out and you were young?
I was 13 or 14 years old, so of course I thought it was the pinnacle of romance. Because that's how it's sold to us, though,
Yeah.
right? And he ends up getting the girl in the end,
Yeah.
with creepy persistence. And, for many years I was quite in love with John Cusack as Lloyd Dobler. The whole idea of him, he kickboxed with his nephew, he wore trench coats. Him and his friends, wrote bad songs about breakups while smoking weed. And I'm like, that seems cool, because I was, 14 years old. And it's not until you revisit that movie and that scene in particular that you realize that idea of men persisting to pursue women is actually a really big problem. And it's been in so many movies that have been fundamental to our understanding of what romantic, hetero relationships are. And I think about, women who have partners who are abusive, and, women try to leave them, and they persist and persist and persist, and the women give in, and this happens so often. And I'm like, well, what would have happened if those movies didn't exist, if those scenes didn't exist, if he had not stood out there with the boombox and instead just accepted the breakup with grace and dignity? Imagine that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Jen, you published a poetry collection in 2021, which I brought, but I apparently left in the room. I loved it. It was really
Thank you.
good. But I did not love what I read in Superfan about why you stopped writing poetry for so long. Can you tell that story?
I was actually, the part I'm going to read is that story.
Oh,
about
okay. Well, why don't you read?
Okay. It's so funny. Thanks for clapping for that. This actually comes from a chapter called The Genius, which is about Justin Bieber. Not that he's a genius, but, well, he could be. I'm not, there is no Justin Bieber slander here tonight. Later, we'll talk about it. And sort of the myth of the male genius, and I'm going to talk about why I stopped writing poetry. It was 1998, and I was 22 years old, one of only 2 students of color in my creative writing MFA program in Montreal. I had not fit in from the very first day when the program hosted a wine and cheese welcome reception, and I sat in the corner of a couch feeling small and making myself even smaller by sinking as deeply as I could into the cushions. Most of the other incoming students seemed to know what kind of wine they liked, holding their glasses by the stem and confidently walking around and greeting professors, not worrying about spilling on their white shirts. I was wearing plaid cargo pants. I had just enrolled in a course called The Canadian Novel and Historiography. Still don't know what that means. And I didn't know what that meant, so I spoke to no one and only drank water. It didn't seem to matter that I, along with everyone else, had been accepted into this elite program on the strength of my writing, or that I had graduated from my bachelor's degree with first-class honors. The only person to approach me was Elaine, the other Chinese-Canadian student, who told me she was from Scarborough and had never drunk wine in her life. Thank God she's here, I thought. That first week, I submitted a poem for feedback in my workshop class, a poem that I had worked on for months and had been through several rewrites. It wasn't a rough draft, quite by design, because I was too afraid of what people might have to say about a poem still in its infancy. When it was my poem's turn to be critiqued, the first person to speak was a male student sitting at the foot of a long table. Here, he said, a copy of my writing in his hand. I just rewrote your poem for you. That seemed like the most efficient thing to do. I took the sheet from him and stared at the blank ink of his confident handwriting. I wasn't angry. Instead, I looked at his suggestions and wondered if he was right, if he knew more about my poem than I did. He acted like he was smarter than me, so perhaps he was. Thank you, I said. Later, as I walked 13 blocks back to my bachelor apartment, I began to realize that what he had done was antithetical to all workshopping etiquette, that he had assumed I was dumber and less talented than him. The rage grew, and I stopped, pulled his version of my poem out of my backpack, and tossed it into a garbage can on Maisonneuve. 2 months later, I dropped out altogether, driven by depression and an acute sense of otherness, and I returned to Vancouver, moving back in with my mother. I stayed with her for just over a year before getting married and moving to a downtown apartment where I would write the first drafts of my first novel. But I did not write poetry again for 15 years. This is the Justin Bieber part. We've all heard about how indispensable Sophia Tolstoy was to her novelist husband, the fiery and ideologically rigid Leo Tolstoy. Only she could decipher his handwriting, and it was she who transcribed and edited War and Peace 7 times, even as she alone cared for their 13 children, managed the household, and provided support to the peasants who lived on their land. She is the epitome of the long-suffering, dutiful, creative man's wife, and she isn't the only one. There was Vera Nabokov, who in addition to performing all the domestic duties, so Vladimir could prolifically write his novels, short stories, plays, criticism, and poems, prevented her husband from burning the manuscript for Lolita, his most famous work. Cynthia Dunbar, Henry David Thoreau's mother, brought him food and washed his clothes while he famously lived in a cabin a short walk from his family home and wrote Walden, A Life in the Woods, his treatise on living alone and simply. It's true. Did you all not know that? And Dorothy Wordsworth not only lived and worked for her brother William, but also emotionally and creatively supported William's friend, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. If you squint just the right way, these women could be muses, if we're being generous. The creative genius and the art they produce are a funny form of social currency. In order to build a career, the genius has to produce something, whether a book or a film or a painting, and the necessary focused attention to create requires care and time and nurturing. Either the genius makes the space for themselves or relies on someone else to make it for them. Leo Tolstoy could not have written War and Peace without Sophia taking care of everything else, so he could write, grow a beard, and ruminate on his religious convictions. Justin Bieber couldn't finish Changes, which he wrote as a tribute to his love for Hailey Bieber, without her calm, practical presence. Or so the women themselves had to believe. As a writer, I'm often invited to appear at literary festivals. When I was an emerging author, I would lurk in the festival's hospitality suites, all but invisible to the more famous authors around me. In those moments, as someone who had been so recently granted entry into a very exclusive and privileged space, I was at once a member of this authorial group, but also not. My youth, my femininity, my small physical size, and my race combined to form a kind of cloaking device that kept others from recognizing me as a fellow writer. It was far more common for other authors to assume I was a publicist or a server or a girlfriend. While those with more fame and power barely saw me, I never stopped seeing them. There was the best-selling novelist who controlled his peers and students with a strange combination of nurturing and cruelty, who held court at the local festival, always surrounded by a crowd of women ready to laugh at his jokes. There was the prize-winning author who brought his wife and toddler to a literary party, only to ignore them both while she tried to nurse amid all the noise, her shirt unbuttoned crookedly. There was the charming, handsome writer who challenged a series of attractive women to arm wrestle him in a bar while his wife stayed home in a distant city. The women took care of the house, the children, those male egos, and their drinks. I know. I saw them. Thank you.
Amazing. So how do you do it? Because as this goes on, you talk about the real genius of the female writers. Their genius is not just what they've written, but that they could write and take care of their families and their homes and everything else, do that, mental labor or emotional labor. How do you do that? Because you're a successful writer, you are an editor, you are busy, and you're a single mother.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know how. I think that what happens is that, I talk about this a lot, but when I'm promoting a book, especially when my son was younger, he's 12 now, so it's a little bit easier. I remember the tour for The Conjoined was almost the worst logistical nightmare I could even imagine. Like, for me to get to an event downtown at 7:30, I would have had started to get everything ready by 2:30, 3 o'clock, and to, get myself ready, pick up my kid from school, feed him, get him to where he has to go, get the cab, get to the event half an hour ahead of time, grab something to eat somehow on the way, and then all in reverse when the event is over. And those days were a real nightmare. And I think the only way that I could do it was A, never clean my house. That didn't happen. And B, I really had to believe that what I was doing was worth it. Because if I didn't believe it, none of that was going to happen. If I thought that my books were bad, or if I thought that my books weren't going to find an audience or that people would hate them, or if it wouldn't do anything, none of this would have occurred, right? Because you don't do that unless you actually believe that what you're writing is worth something. So it's a point I make in the book, right? Is that you almost have to believe in your own genius, or else it's not going to happen. Which is not to say I think I'm a genius 100% of the time, quite the opposite. But I think when I read about somebody like Toni Morrison, who was a single mom, she had 2 kids, she was also an editor at Random House, and then she wrote these beautiful books, these wonderful books that changed literature, literally changed literature. She had to believe that, no? Or else it was never going to happen.
Oh, amazing. How do you find the mental space to write with all of that going on?
Because I hate doing anything else. It's the only thing. Writing, the process of writing is the thing that makes me the happiest. Truly. Other than pop culture, but it's the thing that makes me the happiest. It's the only thing that when I sit down to do it, I really want to do it.
Can we talk about the dedication?
Yeah.
Because when I realized, I didn't recognize the names when I saw the dedication page, but then later on you write about these women. Can you tell us who you dedicated the book to and why you made that decision?
I dedicated the book to the 6 Asian women who were murdered in Atlanta in 2021, I think. Here, I'll read the names for you. It's important for me to read the names
Yes,
out as often as I
thank you.
can. My pronunciation might be sketchy. I do practice, but sometimes, So their names are Soon Chung Park, Hun Yong Grant, Sun Cha Kim, Yang Ai Yu, Zhao Ju Dan, and Dao Yu Feng. And they were, of course, worked in massage parlors, and they were murdered by a guy who was mad that he was sexually attracted to Asian women. So that was, and so it's important for me to make space for them in this context because we don't know what lives they could have had. We don't know what their plans were. We don't know what their pasts were. We don't really know much of anything of them. And I always try to honor the space that their lives would have taken up had they had the opportunity to do that. And it makes me really angry that his story and his name and his face are often remembered. And these women deserve better than that.
Yeah.
That's all women do.
Popular culture has not done any favors for the way people who might be off kilter perceive Asian women. Obviously, that is, you write about this at length in an incredible essay. Can you talk about what that was like for you to see, to consume, or to have to deal with?
Yeah, you mean like the way, well, I mean, I read about Evelyn Lau in particular, the great Vancouver writer Evelyn Lau, who's been a hero of mine for many years, ever since I was a teenager. And I felt that in so many ways in the media, she was not given enough space to be the brilliant writer that she is often. And because she had written a book about her life as a teenage runaway, the book is called Runaway, and sort of her life, on the streets. And that book did so well that I think it haunted her career for the rest of her life in a way that, I don't know what she thinks about it, but this is the way I've seen her belittled in media many times, which always felt really terrible to me. And her work speaks for itself. She's won many accolades, and she's a beautiful writer. The thing about it, for me, the lack of fulsome representation for Asian women in media leads to an idea that Asian women are not quite fulsomely human, right? So there are these, sort of stereotypes that we've seen perpetuated in media a lot. There's like the submissive, smart girl who takes piano lessons and is a chess prodigy. There is like, the newscaster with the newscaster hair who's very serious and tells you very serious things. There's the woman who looks submissive but is a tiger in the sack. As soon as she pulls those chopsticks from her hair, watch out. And like these things all contributed to the way that Asian women are fetishized in real life. They're the ways that they're fetishized in porn, the way men talk to you in a bar. Like I read about it in the book, but I remember I met this guy once at a bar when I was single. He was really cute, and he had nice pants on. And I talked to him for a while, and he was really funny. And then he said to me, tell me the truth. Did you grow up white? And I said, what does that mean? But I knew what that meant. He meant, am I like a banana? Am I yellow on the outside and white on the inside? Did I grow up in a Western style house? Or, do my parents live in an ethnic enclave and drive a champagne-colored Lexus? Like, that's what he's asking me, right? And I should have thrown my drink in his face, but I didn't. Because the pressure to be well-behaved, the pressure to just get along, the pressure to smile and just laugh it off is so intense for many women, but for Asian women in particular, where respectability is a really huge part of survival. So you laugh it off, and you just go on.
I wish you had thrown your drink in his face.
I still have his number on my phone. I could call him right now. Come on, buddy.
You could DoorDash a drink over, tip the guy extra to deliver it under notes. Yes, the delivery should be toss it in the guy's
Okay,
face.
here's the secret. It's not in the book. He was a reclaimed wood carpenter, which I found attractive.
And who wouldn't?
Yeah, guess what he is now? He's a mortgage broker.
Shocker. I want to talk about the subtitle because maybe that last story aside, I feel like pop culture didn't necessarily break your heart, but has helped your heart to grow and heal and help create you. Popular culture remains a very important part of your life.
Yeah, and I think part of that is due to the fact that pop culture has changed quite a bit over my lifetime, which is great, which I'm grateful to see. I joke about people confusing me for Ali Wong, but I love her very much. And I think that there are a few movies that have done a lot for the way Asian people are being portrayed in media, like The Farewell by Lulu Wang is one of my favorite movies. It's so beautiful. Pop culture, there's always so much, for me, solace to be found in pop culture, because if you're feeling really down, or if you're feeling like my day's been really bad, you can really look forward to watching the Netflix documentary on Pamela Anderson, which I highly recommend. I watched it last night. And you can, there's that part of it, but also the part where pop culture often twigs something in you, like you feel that it relates to you, that it connects to you somehow, and then you have the great joy of being able to figure out, why do I like this thing, or why do I feel rage at this thing? Why do I hate Gwyneth Paltrow so much? And then that's a fun time.
How did you know that was my next question?
Oh, well, yeah, ask me about her. I love talking about Gwyneth Paltrow.
Was there ever a time when you didn't hate her?
No. She is odious. Honestly, no. But lately, I've hated Gwen Stefani more. That could change.
Understandably.
Yeah, could change.
Can we talk about the cultural appropriation issue with Gwen Stefani?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like, so it all started. So when she was in No Doubt, she often took on like South Asian stuff. So one of her bandmates, I can't remember his name, is South Asian. So she would like put henna on herself and like wear a bindi, for example. And then she was also taking a lot of like sort of cultural markers from like Latina women. And then in the early 2000s, she got obsessed somehow with Japanese culture, and she had these like 4 women during the promotional tour for Love Angel Music Baby, which is the name of her album and also the name of her brand, shortened to Lamb. Sorry, too much. And so she had these 4 Asian women follow her around during this promotional tour. They were dancers, but they were not allowed to speak, and they were named Love Angel Music Baby. They didn't even retain their real names. Oh. And there's a video, I watched this, it must have been Much Music or something, where a journalist was interviewing her and then addressed a question to one of these ladies, these girls. And Gwen's face, oh, no, they're not allowed to talk, she says. They're just figments of my imagination.
Oh.
And then I was like, that seems bad. And I was, in my 20s then, so I didn't think too hard about it, but I'm like, that seems bad. But then I was like, whatever, who cares? It's just Gwen Stefani. Never thinking her career would continue on. And then she did an interview just recently with Allure magazine with 2 Asian female journalists where they asked her about this, because this has been an ongoing thing, people would talk about it. And she just said, I'm Japanese. And they're like, what? And they kept trying to get her to contextualize it, and she just kept saying, but I am Japanese. And they're like, no, you're not. And then it just got worse and worse. And, they eventually reached out to her later for comment, and they wanted to ask her about anti-Asian racism during COVID, and she had no comment on that. So you're quite happy to take the cute, quirky, marketable aspects of a culture, but not willing to engage with the actual things you could do to help a community. That's the worst exploitation. And I just got so angry with her. Like, it was just like, you've made millions of dollars from this branding of what you think is Japanese culture, but you don't get to walk down the street and have men say things to you, like say ni hao, everything. They look at you, hey pretty lady, ni hao. You don't have to do that. You don't have to live through that. You don't have to live through walking during COVID, a woman on a balcony yelling like racial slurs at me. So you get to take the cute stuff, but you don't get to live with that. Gwen Stefani can suck it, in my opinion.
I'm not thrilled that the media reached out to her to ask her about anti-Asian bias during COVID.
The 2 female journalists who had interviewed her asked her because they were hoping she would redeem herself, hoping she'd made a donation, anything, but no.
How was COVID for you in that respect?
Scary for me, but not for me personally. I was never really scared for myself. I was really more worried about my mom. My mom's pretty independent, and she's elderly, and I was worried about her because of a lot of those things happen to elderly people, especially in Chinatown, which is where my mom hangs out often. I think the idea of it was scarier than the actual lived experience of going out in the world. But what is scary is not knowing when someone's going to say something to you, because when the veneer gets ripped off, people feel emboldened to say things. And my biggest fear was actually that someone would say something to my child, and I didn't want that to happen, especially not in front of me, because then I'd be really angry, right? And I didn't know if I wanted my son to see me that way. But yeah, it was scary. Because I felt like as soon as the news broke about COVID and that they thought it came from a place in China, I was prepared for what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen, how that was going to go down for Asian people around the world.
That was another very powerful chapter in the book. I mean, I can see people picking up this book and thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. And it is. It's very fun. But it's really excruciating at times, in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That can be that'll be my blurb.
Excruciating, but in a good way.
And you write at one point, reliving the past is exhausting, an exhumation of feelings that get in the way of living a simple, happy life. So what was it like to relive all of this stuff as you wrote it, and now you have to relive it again because you've got people like me asking you these questions again and again?
Writing it was okay. Parts of it were okay. I think that the anti-Asian racism stuff was difficult because it felt very in here because of things that, of course, had happened to my parents and my grandparents, which was a lot in their day when they were younger. I think that people asking me about it now is not so bad, but it's weird. Like, I feel really weird about it because, like, most of my books before were not about me at all. So, like, people would ask me about my characters, and I'm like, great, you can hate my character, but, like, now you might hate me, which is, like, feels very personal. But it's been okay. Like, I've said this many times, like, one of the things that dogs, like, Asian female writers, and I think, female writers of color in general, is that often our writing is derided as being confessional or autobiographical or just domestic, those types of descriptors. And there was a while ago where I thought, I don't care, like, it doesn't matter to me anymore. You can think what you want about if I'm writing about myself or I'm just writing about myself. You can call it whatever you want. I have no interest in separating myself from my art. My art and me are the same thing. So here I am, and this is it. So I'm actually really oddly at peace with it. I don't know what that says about my psychology. Could say a lot of things, I don't know.
I can't imagine anyone hating you after reading this book, except for maybe Gwen Stefani. And Gwyneth, of course.
I mean, some of my ex-boyfriends probably hate me.
Oh, that's true. Good point. I want to hear the elevator pitch for an essay about your mom and the Jenner Kardashians.
Oh my God, that chapter, my editor hated it because she hates the Kardashians. She's like, why are you writing about them? And I was like, I can't stop. So the elevator pitch for that particular essay was that, like, so Kris Jenner is the uber stage mother. She is the stage mother that no one will ever top. You cannot. She's the biggest, the most famous, the most successful. And she has 5 daughters. My mom has 5 daughters. And Kris Jenner is overly involved with her children in every single way, emotionally, financially, especially, in every single way. My mother, like, I don't know if she even knows what kind of books I write. She's quite distant, and she was never really hands-on with us. And she certainly wasn't the one to say, you're doing amazing, sweetie. No, that's Kris Jenner. So I wanted to, my theory is that my mom and Kris Jenner are opposites, but that people who are total and complete opposites are actually the same. It's just that the manifestation of their behavior is different. So that was the elevator pitch for it. I really had to sell my editor on that one. She was so angry with me. Oh,
I'm glad you stuck with it. What do you think of the Kardashians?
I think thinking about them too hard is a challenge. I would say that they're very fascinating. I think that they are really terrible for women in terms of body positivity. I think they're really terrible in terms of like exploiting different cultures and then monetizing it and selling it back to us. I think that they are far too wealthy than any people should be. Having said that, I find them hilarious because they're always fighting, like they're always throwing purses at each other. But like I do think that there's an interesting thing with Kris Jenner in particular about how she's created this, because she has. All of her children, except for Rob, bless him, are involved in this family empire. And like I'm really interested in like how she created it, how it is that she is able to see what her children are good at and monetize it to that level, right? And how do you get your children to buy into that? There's not one of them who's like, screw you, mom, I'm out of here. Just Rob, bless him. But like, you know, so that's an interesting thing for me. Because like my mother, if you asked my mother what I was good at, I don't even know what she'd say. She's like, her lipstick is good. Like, I don't know what my mother would even say. Like it's a really fascinating dynamic there. So that's my take on them.
Your lipstick is good, but
Thanks.
I'm fairly certain your mother would say that you're a good writer.
Maybe. That would be nice if she would say that.
Would be. We're going to go to audience questions in a couple of minutes, but before we do, I have to ask you, you read about Princess Diana, but I have to ask you about, you must be team Harry, Meghan.
No, I have no teams in the British royal family. No teams. I watch as a detached observer. Since Princess Diana died, I'm a detached observer.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Good
Yeah.
answer. All right, questions can be about Jen's book, or she's very happy to take questions about celebrity gossip. She knows quite a bit.
I tell people I'm better than Google. If you have a question, I can usually answer it faster than a Google search.
So if you have a question, you can just stand up and or put your hand up, and I'll choose you, and I will choose you.
You will be chosen.
I will anoint you, and I will repeat the question because there are people watching at home or wherever they're watching from. And actually, I've already got some questions here from the people at home. So they're
thanks, people at home.
They're. I hope that you guys are going to step up here. When does admiration and appreciation turn into unhealthy super fandom?
Yeah, that's deep.
The people at home are deep.
Yeah, they're deep. So we call these parasocial relationships, right? And then, so for me, it gets really unhealthy if you start to believe you own that person. So there's a segment of fandom for particular celebrities where people feel a lot of ownership over things like their romantic lives. So like Harry Styles is one of those guys. Like I think people really do feel when he was dating Olivia Wilde, his fandom really did not like it. They were quite cruel to her. And Chris Evans is one of those people, weirdly, I don't know why. He seems very milquetoast to me, but some people are like really into that guy. He's one of those people who are like that. So I think that when people start believing that the celebrity owes you something, or that the cultural asset owes you something. So I think the Star Wars fandom can get really toxic also, where people believe that these movies should be made the way they want them to be made. So yeah, that's I think where it gets really terrible. So the way I love Keanu Reeves is totally healthy. I don't own him. He does his own thing, okay?
And you actually, thanks to this festival, had some interaction, like true interaction with him.
Yeah, I moderated Ethan Hawke.
Oh, Ethan Hawke,
He was Ethan
not
Hawke, but I
Keanu
loved him
Reeves.
too. So
Okay.
I moderated Ethan Hawke for Vancouver Writers Fest for a special event when he wrote a book. It was over Zoom because it was during COVID. But he was like, did not disappoint. And I know I'm biased, but like he's so handsome. I was like, and I said to him, I was in the middle of writing Superfan. So I said, there's a chapter in my book about Dead Poets Society. And he's like, oh, wow, interesting. He's like, ask me anything you want. I know everything about that movie. And I could come up with nothing. My mind went totally blank, and I'm like, what a great beard he's got. Like, I was like,
Okay, question in the back.
Jen, I'm curious to know what you think, where you think there's a place
you referring to Long Duck Dong?
Okay, I'll just briefly repeat the question, and that is, where's the place for films that were very popular when I was growing up, like The Breakfast Club, films from the 80s that are now, when we watch them, are problematic?
The interesting thing is my child is now 12 years old, so we do watch those movies from time to time. He kind of enjoys what he calls vintage. Thanks, kid. But it offers me the opportunity to rethink those things and to talk to him about it. And the problematic parts of those movies are actually really, really obvious. They're not hard to see. And for me, it's an opportunity to talk to him about why that's bad. And the amazing thing for me is that when he watches that, he already knows. I don't even have to tell him. He's like, oh no, they should not talk to that nerd like that, or whatever. And yet the Long Duck Dong thing, he was like, well, that's racist. And I'm like, I'm so glad you know that, sir. But I think there's a place for them in terms of discussion. I think that there are parts of all of those movies that are really charming and delightful, and that we can continue to love those parts of them, but it's up to us to interrogate further why it's terrible also. It's like any conflicted relationship, right? Like, there's good parts and then there's bad parts. And we can love what we love, but it's our responsibility to discuss the other parts. Is there any movie that you loved when you were much younger that you absolutely cannot watch now? Yeah, probably, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, Top Gun is really hard for me to watch now. Like, and you don't have to be serious about it. It's just that Top Gun is like, well, the military thing, the military industrial complex. But like, I have this theory about Top Gun, is that if you grew up as somebody who was attracted to men or people, like men, and you came to your sexual awakening either through Top Gun or The Lost Boys. And I am firmly team Lost Boys. But anyway, I digress. But watching Top Gun is actually it's funny, but it's also just, they're so oiled up. It's weird. It's not my thing.
Okay, question, yes.
Would you say that your enjoyment of pop culture has changed now that celebrities have Twitter accounts, or that they're just more socially available?
I will just repeat the question. Has your enjoyment of popular culture changed, diminished, now that celebrities have Twitter accounts or are more accessible?
Yeah, you see, that's such a good question. Thank you. I would say yes, because before there was a void. We didn't know what their personalities were like, and you could just create it, which is part of the reason I became a writer, because I was creating these relationships in my head, because I had no idea what they were actually like, not at all. But like now, anyone you enjoy, you can look it up and realize that their Instagram is terrible. Like, and it's like, one of the people who I thought I enjoyed was Brie Larson, who was, is she Captain America? No, she's the other one. She was in the Marvel.
Yeah, she's in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
She starred in Room.
Yeah, which was a great movie, and I like her as an actress. And then when I looked at her Instagram, it's like literally just reels of her working out, and like nonsensical captions like, "Seize the day, # body positivity." I'm like, this has nothing to do with your workout. Or like, just really weird things like, "The sunshine warms the soul." Like, just, and I'm like, you're odious. Like, I can't. But then I thought, yeah, so it does kind of diminish. It depends. And then, so what you're looking for now is you're looking for someone whose work, creative output you enjoy, but who also isn't odious on social media. And that can be really difficult. Yeah. I don't know.
Great question. I'll take one from the people at home. Do you resent your sisters at all? They married
every day.
They married off in quick succession and left you and your sister with your mom to take care of. Also, you mentioned in the book that since there are 5 of you, somebody had to not succeed, which is not you. This question not sent in by one of your sisters.
I think it was. I know who. No, actually, no, I never did. And this is something that is really important to talk about, actually, because when they were moving out of the house, I was never resentful of the lives that they were embarking on, because they deserved to go out and have a life and to start lives, right? I wanted my sisters to be happy. It just felt inevitable that I was always going to be the one left behind. That's all. And no, I've never resented them for any of that. No, they deserve to have the beautiful lives that they do have now. So that's like fine. What was the last part of that question?
It wasn't really a question.
Oh, okay.
Also, you mentioned in the book that since there are 5 of you, somebody had to not succeed.
Yeah.
Did someone not succeed? I'll ask.
Oh, I think in some ways, yeah, my mother thinks I'm a bit of a wingnut.
Oh God.
Well, I don't have a job that's like easily identifiable, which is like.
You have books that are on the bookshelf.
Yeah, I don't think she really cares about that so much. I think it's just that I could have been anything else. I could have been a lawyer, or I couldn't have been a pharmacist. You don't want me in charge of your drugs. But like she would have liked those things, right? And I think that and then I was married, and then I got divorced, and all of that was really difficult for her to deal with. So yeah, I always say that I'm the one that she thinks is the failure.
I find that hard to believe. Any other questions in this room? Hi.
Hi. We were talking about Instagram, and I don't know if you've seen Madonna's Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Deeply disturbing.
She should stop.
I'm wondering, what is the psychology behind her decision to transform herself into an alien? Because I don't think it's just about anti-aging. There's something going on.
I'll just repeat the question. It concerns Madonna's Instagram and her transformation, as the audience member says, into an alien. It's not about aging, anti-aging. It seems to be something else. What's going on there?
I don't think that like I don't have a problem with the way anyone chooses to look. If that's the way she wants to look, that's cool with me. I think where she upsets me is that she has never really acknowledged how she took, say, like queer dance culture and monetized it. She's never really acknowledged how she's taken a lot of aspects of like Black culture and monetized it. That for me is my main problem with her. And when she talks about how she's like a rebel and a troublemaker and a vanguard, I'm like, you are all the people that you didn't acknowledge when you made all this money. So that when I say she should stop with Instagram, I mean she needs to stop with that garbage.
Yeah.
She can look any way she wants. I mean, cool, whatever.
Here's another question from our home audience. How did your research for this book compare to that for your previous books?
Novels are very different for the things that you research because you're usually researching things that you don't know too much about often. And it's quite detached. Like I know for, let's just say my book, The Better Mother, I got to research like 1950s era Vancouver and burlesque dancers, which was super fun and not at all personal. And for Superfan, with this book, I really had to, you write a draft of an essay or memoir and you put in, you write the things that you think are true, and then I would go back and double check those things. And that was kind of, that is what it is. But another thing that I got to do with this book is I really did get to watch a lot of movies and TV, which wasn't bad. And you got to go, one of the things that like with this book is like when I did do that deep dive on the Kardashians, it just gets more and more distressing actually. And then when I did the deep dive on Justin Bieber, that got more and more distressing. But having said that, a lot of it was really fun. There was a scene in his documentary, Haley is his wife, is in a lot of it. And there's a scene where he has like a pill box with the days of the week on it. And she's the one who opens it and gives them to him. And she has the timer on her phone about when he has to take his medications. Not his phone, her phone. And then when he's done with that, he lies down in a portable hyperbaric chamber and she zips him up. He could zip up himself. It has a zipper that you could zip yourself up. But she does it all. And I was just like, this is very upsetting to me.
He has a portable hyperbaric chamber?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
It looks like a big sleeping bag.
We have time for one more question. Who wants to ask the great last question? Yes.
I don't know what the great last question, but I often have this issue of like watching something, reading a book that I love, and then I almost don't want to know who the artist is, because then I have this cognitive dissonance possibly, finding out that it's a person whose values I can't inhabit. Do you have that trouble, and can you separate the art from the artist?
The question is about separating the art from the artist. For instance, you can watch a film or consume some art, as the audience member says, and really love it, but then if you learn about the artist being problematic, then what? Do you have this problem?
Everybody has a choice to make when they choose to consume or buy any cultural product, and the reasons that we choose one thing over the other are super personal, and I genuinely don't like to tell people how they should navigate that, and it's also different for every cultural thing that you're looking at. Like, you may feel one way about Johnny Depp, and you may feel another way about Woody Allen, both of whom I don't deal with anymore, but that's just me personally. So what my personal barometer is that when I look at something and I think that the creator has done something terrible, I think to myself, do I have a choice to choose something by someone who's not terrible that is equally as good? And the answer is almost inevitably yes. So that's where I go with that. It's just personal for me. I do think that when we love something and then the creator does something that we can't square with in our heads, it doesn't take away our relationship with the thing that they created. We can still love that thing, and we can still, think about the relationship we've had with that thing with fondness, and understand that novel or the movie or whatever brought us somewhere that was valuable and good. But again, at the end of the day, like, just for me, if I can choose, a movie with Michelle Yeoh in it instead of Johnny Depp, I will choose Michelle every time. Yeah.
So I don't know if I necessarily agree that you can still have that experience. Like, Annie Hall is was one of my all-time favorite films.
It's hard to watch now.
Can't watch it anymore. And don't even get me started on Manhattan. You cannot watch that. One last gossipy question. What was going on with Ben Affleck at the Grammys? Do you have any intel on that?
Okay, here's my intel on that. I do have some. So one of the seat fillers at the Grammys posted a TikTok, and she was sitting right beside them or just behind them. And during the broadcast, Jennifer Lopez literally picks up her phone to check their mentions, and then she shows it to Ben Affleck and says, "You're a meme again." And he said, "Jesus Christ, again?" And then she laughs about it, but he continues to look like this for the rest of the broadcast. He chose, even though he knew people were talking about it, chose to continue to look confused and miserable and grumpy. So I don't think there's anything going on. I think he was just kind of in a bad mood.
But they're still okay?
I think so, because she laughed. She's like, "Look, babe, you're a meme again." That suggests to me that it's fine.
Not that I'm overly invested in their relationship or anything.
No, me neither. But genuinely, she seemed to think it was funny.
Okay.
And I think, genuinely, I think part of her attraction to him is that he's kind of a grumpy, moody artist, and she likes that. So whatever fills your tank, Jennifer Lopez.
Jen Sookfong Lee, I knew you would not disappoint in my Ben Affleck question, and the book is so fantastic, and this evening has been amazing. You're just a friggin' delight to listen to.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marsha Lederman, for asking me those wonderful questions.
Thank you, Jen. And I believe there's going to be yes, let's applaud.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I believe there's going to be a formal wrap-up.
Yes.
And here you are.
Here I am.
I also want to point out that Jen's books are for sale over there, and she will be signing them, but you're probably going to say that.
It's fine to reinforce it. The more books they sell, the better. That was fantastic. I could sit here and listen to you talk about pop culture all day or all night. So thank you for that. Thank you, Leslie, and the Writers' Fest team for curating this wonderful evening as well, and for bringing them to the stage. As Marsha was just saying, our friends from the Black Bond and Book Warehouse are right here selling books. Jen's going to sign books on the table next door, so if you can please line up around the wall over there, that'd be fantastic.
Marsha's signing too.
Okay, yeah, as well. Marsha's signing too. There's Marsha's books as well. So before I let you go, I want to quickly tell you about 3 upcoming events we have. For our Black History Month programming next week, we're having a panel conversation on how Black communities use social media in BC to organize, connect, and celebrate online. That's in person here in the Montalbano Theatre on the 8th floor next Wednesday. Then the day after, we're hosting an online author talk with Sheila Murray about her new book, Finding Edward, which was nominated for the Governor General Award last year. So that's online on Thursday next week. And then, last but not least, the next Incite is right here on the same stage on February 22nd with Sherry Dimeline, who will be chatting with Billy Ray Belcourt about her new novel, Venko. So you don't want to miss that. You're going to get an email from the Writers' Festival, I imagine, about that, so you'll get a reminder. For more information about all of this, just go to our website or check out our social channels or talk to me. I have this fancy thing over here, so you'll recognize me. And we also have some feedback forms in that table that are super useful for us. So if you can pick one up and fill it out, that'd be fantastic. That's all I got. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for being here.